right. Hello, and I'd like to thank you all for joining us for this discussion on the benefits of data-powered technology for nonprofits. I have today joining me Kyle Clubb, who's a practice director for advanced analytics at Readapt. My name is Josh Doherty. I'll be kind of moderating through the discussion, but Kyle is really the talent here to walk us through all the details about how nonprofits can get the most out of their data and out of analytics. So thanks for jumping on today, Kyle.
Great, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Cool. Let's jump right in. I would love to hear from you just your overall thoughts on how important it is for nonprofits to adopt a data-driven culture. I know we think about a lot about this in business and in tech, but like, how important is the data-driven culture for the nonprofits that you work with?
It's extremely important. So anytime we look at the science of performance engineering, whether it's a private company or nonprofit, data is really central to that. Most performance issues can be traced back to not the correct data being presented in a meaningful way that allows workers and performers to really achieve the most that they can. So, for a summary of that, the data is central to that. We want to present the correct data, the most relevant data, so that they can see the consequences of their choices quickly and make adjustments in time and see what's going to work best for them.
Excellent. As we think about like a nonprofit who maybe hasn't had this data discipline, right, or data discipline as they've been going through their work, how do you go about building or creating that data-driven culture that's required really to adopt an advanced analytics mindset?
Yeah, a lot of organizations that we work with are in various, I would say, degrees of maturity. There are many organizations that really work against their tacit knowledge. This is just they bring decades of experience to nonprofits. They know their space, and unfortunately, with that, there is some value in making decisions that feel right, sort of the art to it. But if you can combine that with relevant data, if you can train employees and managers how to look at things in a more objective fashion, how to do A/B test, how to come to meetings and decide, hey, there's not enough data to support this. We have our assumptions. And how do we go testing those assumptions or testing our hypothesis? You can do a lot of experimentation and you can look at data in a new way and it becomes quite valuable.
Is that testing or that, I don't know, optimization, is that really how you kind of create those aha moments for for an organization that's transitioning into a data-driven approach that helps them buy in, or are there other techniques that you use?
Yeah, for techniques, there is, every company is different, but typically there's those three big pieces: the technology, the people, and the processes. The technology, what we find is not really the big problem. What we typically see is it's the people and the processes in place that need to be improved. So technology is a part to it, but that's frankly the easy piece. We really want to help elevate how people at nonprofits, volunteers, normal employees look at data, how they rely on it. A lot of times it was really the speed. They just couldn't get the data they needed to make decisions fast enough. So the decisions were, again, based on a lot of assumptions and feelings. But if we really create and architect the data platform correctly, they can get the data in a timely manner to make those decisions and to solve problems.
Yeah, what are some of those key use cases that you usually tackle first with these nonprofits? So as you're trying to work on adoption of advanced analytics and a data-driven approach, what use cases do you see are most common as like those quick wins to help people get started?
Typically, we look at companies' financials. We talk to the executives and see where the biggest pain points are. A lot of it is just the data is in a state that's very difficult to do analysis again. So we quickly try to clean and govern that. There are some quick AI and ML, what I say is advanced analytics operations to help with donor maximization. When should we contact a donor? Do we want to keep doing it too often? Could they become wary of too much? Where's that point? What type of year should we contact them? I mean, what type of fundraisers should we do? And then also operationalization of those models. We also look at operations, just expenses. So most nonprofits really want to get their administrative costs down because sites like Charity Navigator, and if I have money to donate, I will go to these other sites to see what nonprofits are most effective. Because if I give $100, I would love 95 to go to the main mission and purpose. I don't want to give to a charity where half of the money just goes to overhead and administrative costs. So a lot of nonprofits really want to pull back the administrative costs and to optimize their operations.
Makes a lot of sense. So you talk about with fundraising, which is obviously the lifeblood of nonprofits, a really important piece. Talked about using predictive analytics and using AI ML to predict like when you should ask for them, what, or ask donors for money, how often, those type of things. Are there other ways that analytics can really help enhance a fundraising effort for an organization?
Yeah, it really depends on where the revenue is coming in. One nonprofit that we work with, probably 80% of their revenue really is grants, and the funding comes from that channel. So grant writing, proposal writing, and working with different agencies to secure money from those grants, we really look at advanced models like natural language processing models to actually look at the way they write their grants and the requests for money to see, hey, should we write this a different way to get potentially a higher percentage of approvals and more revenue? So that's another use case that's pretty specific just to the actual grant writing.
Yeah, that's a big part of how a lot of nonprofits get their funding. So specific, but really valuable. I know in the grant writing area and in many other areas, regulatory compliance is very important for nonprofits. So how does this data-driven approach help make compliance easier? Like what are the ways that it simplifies that?
Yeah, for compliance, whether it's something like processing credit cards for donations, PCI, all these regulatory um, umbrellas of rules that you have to follow. Data-driven culture, we think of it as making decisions, solving problems. But if the technology can quickly expose reports for compliance reasons, so a lot of times it may be just to expose how are we operating internally for those third-party governing agencies. So we want to make a platform that can quickly get that out, and we don't spend a lot of overhead creating that information. And then also tagging and governance of data so that we know the entire ecosystem. What's that PII? What's that personal information? How do we make sure it doesn't leak out of the organization? How do we control that? So it's really in the data governance piece, which would be central to some of the frameworks that we operate with.
And another thing that I think nonprofits can somewhat do from gut feel sometimes is that budgeting and forecasting and looking forward to future planning. What are some common insights that you've had in working with nonprofits that help them do that budgeting and forecasting more accurately?
Yeah, from FP&A perspective, there's definitely value in understanding what's going to be, forecasting our revenue donations. If we're trying out new experimentations on new ways to get revenue, be able to really forecast that accurately. That'll influence operational spend and budgeting, which will be important. So definitely cash flow and just how a nonprofit operates, it's really important. Um, so there's a lot of FP&A algorithms in place that we utilize that'll help forecasting be more accurate, whether that's forecasting at a really granular level. It could be forecasting at a GL account, like an accounting account, a very granular level, or a very large level. So getting the accurate forecasts are really important to get budgeting right, to making sure that we have the cash on hand that we would expect, and that we can make those investments, or the nonprofits can make those investments that they anticipated and want to do.
So, as you spoke about before, one of the challenges for nonprofits is not that they don't have data, right? Everyone has data, but that they can't get to the data or that they aren't able to access it quickly enough. So, how do you help solve for that?
There is, again, a lot of technology that can deal with massive amounts of data and get what you want quickly. So what's really key, I think, is understanding where the business wants to go and the strategic plans that they have. Most businesses, maybe every year, every 6 months, or quarterly, will get together and talk about strategic initiatives and vision. And if you can present the right data to inform those conversations, that's really useful. So we strive to make sure that that data is in place for those strategic conversations within the leader and the boards and the chapters. We can also do, again, other training and other frameworks that we bring in that will allow managers and leaders to structure what they want, to ask for it in a certain way that's very targeted, so that the data professionals and the knowledge workers can get the data, get the relevant data that they want, and not waste a lot of time with data that's just not valuable or important.
Yeah, great. And then one of the things you talked about just then is this quarterly, I think, rhythm of planning and bringing data in front of people, giving them a chance to analyze it. Is that really the key in your mind to kind of having a continuous growth improvement on historic metrics? Is that the way that you really focus on driving increased performance for these organizations?
Yeah, so the vision of that organization, what is that nonprofit trying to achieve? We want to make sure that all of the performance metrics flow into that. What we see all too often is departments that have competing KPIs and things don't really flow into the full mission and vision of the organization. So one of the things we do is we really kind of smooth that out and say, what are we really after? What KPIs should we pay attention to? And then make sure that we're hyper focused on those data points and get those exposed quickly and in a timely manner.
Nice. Well, I think like the last question today, this has been a good conversation unpacking a bit of what nonprofits can do with data, how they can dive into advanced analytics. But if they're ready to really take that leap and start building a data-driven culture with advanced analytics, how can Readapt really help with that process?
We can help in a lot of different ways. There's the technology piece, so modernization of the technology, making sure that the spend around that is cost effective, and that the data, the ability to make those decisions and solve problems is not costing a huge burden. Also, with the people part of it, most nonprofits don't want to go out and hire a huge data science team and a huge data engineering team. So we want to make sure that the technology can be managed by a very few amount of resources. So we want to optimize there. And then the processes that govern all of that to make sure that there is processes to help all this along, and that there is training, because really it shouldn't be just a few folks in the organization that are the brains or the data professionals. All the leaders, all the managers, and really anybody should be thinking with a data mindset on how can I improve my performance? What are my KPIs? What is my purpose in my role? And all that should be cohesively feeding up to the business mission and goals.
Totally. And then what is that first engagement? So say someone reaches out to you, how does that engagement usually start?
We can talk about our data maturity model. So really we look at the entire landscape, all of the aspects of data-driven cultures, and really find where the biggest ROIs are. Some organizations are, hey, let's just focus on our marketing and our donor maximization, and we can go that direction. Some of them want to kind of step back and say, hey, can we re-envision our entire data architecture to make it more effective? So we can start there. So we do have a data maturity model assessment where we really come in and understand where you are or the organization is in their journey and what their priorities are.
Yeah, great. Excellent. Well, Kyle, thanks for your time today. Really appreciate you coming to share some of your insights.
Yep, thank you.
And for anyone watching, if you're interested in learning more, if you're at a nonprofit that is hoping to implement more of a data-driven culture and invest in advanced analytics, I'd invite you to hit the contact button up at the top of the screen. If you're watching this on readapt.com, you can reach out there to one of Readapt's experts, whether it be Kyle or another one of the team. Or if you are watching it somewhere else, like on YouTube, go ahead and come over to readapt.com and get in touch. We'd love to talk to you. Thanks, everyone.